Experiment with the time. For me, it's only 2 o'clock. Uh, Amy's 3, but we wanted to see how it would go if we started a little early so everybody could listen and then maybe get the rest of their day done if they were at work and not have to be rushed out the door or waste the last hour of their time at work listening to us talk about whatever we talk about. So, I guess to start, we're going to talk about, underground administration, what we do. Kind of we take a no bullshit approach to staffing, resume review, HR. If you've seen the website, we've got some colorful language on how we do things. We're pretty proud of that. I'm proud of Amy in the way that she's presented our marketing. It's really cool. I love it. For me, it's been kind of a long time coming to go out on my own. And I really wasn't able to until I met Amy because I don't have all of the tools necessary to build that kind of thing that she did already have built and was able to adapt it to what we're doing. So I really appreciate her for that. I think most of you have heard me talk before, but I was born on a farm, grew up with 400 pigs. Uh, not grew up, but that's like the trauma I had at the end of high school. So I decided I was leaving. Pretty quickly moved to New York, got into the music industry, and that didn't work out forever. My beard turned gray quickly, and I ended up going into staffing and recruiting as a tech recruiter for Robert Half, and did a bunch of agencies, did some startups, did a bunch of training. Wound up at one wild ride of an agency, met Amy, and Underground Admins was born. And I think I'll introduce Amy now. And Amy named it Underground Admins, and I heard a little bit, or I saw a comment that I didn't even know that it was part of a punk scene in Atlanta. Is that why it was named that?
Um, yeah, so I'm originally from Israel, but I grew up in Atlanta, and kind of part of the name is like the meaning of underground, which is like a secret society looking to overthrow the way things are normally done, which is how I feel about HR in general. Um, but also in Atlanta, there's a spot called Underground Atlanta, which is where all the punk bands used to play, and it actually is underground, so it's really cool.
Hmm. Cool. So you were born in Israel and then you moved here.
Well, to Atlanta.
Hmm. How'd you get into staffing? I want you to intro yourself a little more. Everybody doesn't know your story of how you got into
Okay, well, you're
staffing.
asking about just the name.
Okay. Hmm.
Yeah, so I started as a teacher and then I went into marketing because I wasn't into teaching. And then I wound up kind of teaching again business English to people in China and Taiwan. And then they kind of threw me into recruiting. And that's where I started with HR and recruiting. Um, and then I kind of went into a few other companies doing HR recruiting stuff. And I started Underground about a year ago, just kind of doing it as a side thing for other companies. And then Richie kind of came along and we kind of stumbled into turning this into a whole thing.
It's a very nice way to put it.
Hmm.
Um, so I think with this whole program, what we decided is I don't see a ton of recruiters here, but I wanted to do something that was kind of more fun, kind of war stories of being in the job market or what we deal with and kind of why we decided to take this no bullshit approach because I think everybody knows if you scroll through LinkedIn, you see all these wild success stories of everybody that like hired a homeless guy to be the CEO of a company, and you can do that too if you just go hang outside of a Chase long enough. You'll get a great job or something. I don't even know what most of them mean, but um, so I think that's what we decided to do. And there's not a ton of people here, but I think me and Amy will share a couple stories, and then if any recruiters, I guess job seekers too, if you have any wild stuff, um, nothing like we don't want to do the like woe is me stuff, like funny circumstances, because this is a Thursday afternoon, and I know that everybody's been through some horrible things with some kind of discrimination. We don't want to do that today. We want to do kind of funny stuff. So, really, my first one is at my last job, which there were some funny things that happened. It wasn't all bad the whole time. Uh, we were working for a Medicare vendor, and my colleague placed somebody into a project management role, and we already had there was some animosity between us, and we had a lot of crossover in our skill sets, and he beat me out on the position. I was already kind of bent out of shape about it, and so the woman ended up starting, and I was pretty disappointed in general, but I let it go, and I had other stuff to work on. So I was getting ready for work, and I got a call from the old owner. He's pretty mad, and he called me in. He's like, "Why would you ever hire someone from Germany to work in America, knowing that we can't have people out of the country working in these jobs?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about," and I didn't. But since you were basically threatening me, I'd like to know who it was, and it ended up being my coworker. It was a pretty big dramatic thing, but these are the reasons why all of the job postings you see say you have to reside in the US, because unfortunately, even if you're American living abroad, you're still going to have to, your IP address will trace back to you wherever you are in the world, usually, unless you go through great lengths to not to block that somehow. But yeah, I ended up getting to be on the call when he got in trouble for never asking someone where they actually lived, and the client was pretty upset about that. Um,
Wait, but say how they figured that out, because that part's funny.
oh yeah, so she logged in for her first day of work, and it was 8 a.m. in New York. And very clearly, and the women in charge of this company were very keen and very detail oriented, and camera on. So they're logging in with sunrise, and the employee is logging in with like city lights on outside, and they could clearly see it was the middle of the night wherever she was. So clearly she wasn't in America. And they asked her, and she said, "Well, no, I'm from New York, but I live in Germany." So it ended up being a very very short engagement for her because she was dishonest on her application and stuff like that. I think she actually put down a New York address when she applied. So they were very specific after that about time zones and everything like that. So it's so hard to tell stories when nobody can hear. When no, you can't hear people laughing. You have no idea how hard these audios are when you can't see people's reactions. So I'll let Amy tell her fun, same company, same situation, different thing.
Um, so I don't think this one's quite as horrible as hiring someone in Germany. It's supposed to be in the US. But we had actually the same company, I think, which is horrible for them. Was it the same company, Richie?
Yeah, that was both that.
Okay, so another PM for the same company, and we had 6 candidates in, so like plenty of people to choose from. All were, decent or great. But the one that they really liked was the most difficult one, and she just kept throwing out like more and more things that she needed from the company to take this job. And
Mm.
I don't know why she was the favorite, but she was. And so they kept like bending over backwards. Like, first it turned into like she has to work in Argentina every summer. And they were like, okay, they got approval for her to work in Argentina. Um, and then it was she needed more money, and then the company actually pays for them to get their PMP and then gives them a raise after they've gotten it, which is a really awesome thing for a company to do. And this is the first time there was someone that was like, I don't want to get my PMP. Like, I don't want to spend time doing that. But like when they do that, they don't even have to work while they're getting their PMP. Like they're doing that instead of working. It was just very odd. And so then it was like, okay, the PMP is optional. You don't have to do it, but you won't get the raise after because you didn't get a PMP. Um, okay, so everything seemed good. She got her offer, and then she ended up turning it down because there was only like 17 days of PTO.
which was, yeah. But the funny part about that wasn't even how Amy handled it or that these extreme demands. It was that the company kept picking the person, even though they're equally as qualified as everyone else and probably interviewed pretty much the same. I know that all of Amy's candidates were pretty good, but they kept picking the person that had the absolute most demand. It was almost like in a relationship where they're like the person that doesn't whoever loves the least wins or whatever the saying is. Like this woman presented so many roadblocks, and there was another woman that was very good. I thought Brittany was better for the job personally, but they kept picking the person that every time they came to an agreement, something worse happened. And then our crazy boss would call the woman 14 times a day trying to convince her of whatever she was never going to agree
It's
to.
exaggeration.
So
But it,
if
I mean, this was over the course of like 3 months. So this
yeah,
wasn't like over a couple weeks or something. This was like dragged out forever.
hmm
And then she ended up turning it down over like the days off.
yeah, it was just the days off at the end. She got the money she wanted, was going to get a free education certificate that would have essentially give her a 20 to $30,000 raise anywhere else in the industry, and she didn't want that. It was the days off, the PTO. And I had another person at the same company that didn't take the job because she couldn't have unlimited PTO, even though she was getting a $25,000 raise for a very good job. So I think if anybody has other recruiter stories, like I don't want to like do the I got ghosted thing, but if anybody has any funny circumstances, raise your hand. I'll bring you up on the stage.
Or even
Otherwise, we're just
client stories. Like if you're in sales, if you have funny client, because we have
I
some funny
know I
client stories
saw
too.
Lauren laugh, but she had some funny ones. Wes Webb. Am I saying your name right? Hold on, let me get you up here. Is that how you say your name, Wib?
Wib, yeah.
All right, good.
WIB. You guys
And
can hear me okay?
yeah, and me and Wib talk quite a bit because he's had some interesting scenarios. We DM back and forth. Um, but yeah, I'd like to hear a funny one from you. I know you've been
Okay.
around the block.
The- So, like you growing up, I also sort of live on a farm currently. I foster rescue horses, and I also own a donkey. The pasture is a good 200 yards away from my house.
hmm
My donkey thinks she's a lap dog. So if she hasn't seen me outside, she starts calling for me in donkey braying. Now, in the house, in where I work, I have my office set up in my master bedroom because my wife, who was originally when we bought the house, she was supposed to be the work from home person,
hmm
and I was supposed to go into the office. So she has the nice office. I have a I have all her hand me down office equipment in
hmm
the master bedroom. You can barely hear the donkey in the master bedroom, but for some reason, my computer microphone picks up the donkey plain as day and amplifies it into the call.
Oh no.
So I'm on a call with this recruiter, and she's explaining to me, the job description and the responsibilities and so forth. And every once in a while she's talking, my donkey's calling for me. And at first she stops. She goes, "What is that?" I said, "It's my donkey." And okay. And then she goes again, and my donkey starts again. But by about the fourth or fifth time, she got upset and she goes, "Listen, if you don't like the job, just tell me. Don't make these weird noises at me."
What? Were you on you were on audio or video or?
It was like a Zoom call.
And she
Yeah.
thought you were somehow ventriloquisting a donkey.
She thought I had some sort of, computer app or something that I was like making fun of what she was
Wow.
saying by making a donkey noise.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, needless to say, I didn't get a call back from her.
That's hilarious. I did not know where
So
you're
funny.
going with that. I was so concerned about how you started that story. I'm like, is he gonna call recruiters jackasses at the end of this? I was almost sure you were gonna go there. And actually, that's another funny one. And here's a learning lesson. Uh, I had another candidate for the same company me and Amy have been talking about.
This poor company.
Yeah, poor company. Very qualified individual. Came from a big state institution. Um, very good at what she did. Set up her Zoom call. Had everything perfect. And she had 2 young children. Her husband had to run out for the evening. She's in the middle of her final interview, and her kid busted the door open, creates a hurricane behind her. She lost her focus and she couldn't regain her composure and lost the job to another person. And that just goes to you gotta the remote thing is great, but when you're in these interviews, you gotta bolt the doors shut and have somebody watch your kids because
I
that's how
mean,
easy it is to lose a job.
you
He had
gotta have a babysitter or
yeah,
something
Wib had
if
a
you have kids,
donkey.
or like your
Wib had a
mom or
freaking
something.
donkey ruin his interview. So you can't reason with it. Well, you can sometimes reason with children more than you can donkeys, but you have to still safeguard it and not lose a job over it. Bring Kara up here. Well, yeah,
Yeah, I
well,
mean,
that's
the
wild.
thing is, I think one of the things with remote is people are treating it like you can continue on with your normal day while working, but whether working or interviewing or whatever, like you've gotta act like you're, you know, a real interview or like at work in person.
hmm Yeah, I saw a post earlier about somebody jumped off a Zoom to help a candidate, and the idea was fine. They helped the candidate to understand what she should be asking for wage wise, salary wise. But the post said that the interviewer jumped off a panel and called the candidate's cell phone during the interview. And my problem with it isn't that she called. The problem with me would be that the candidate actually answered the phone during a panel interview. I'd be very concerned about hiring that person. So leads me to believe it's a fake post to begin with. But anyway, hi Kara, how you doing? You there? Kara, your mic's not working, I don't think. Either that or my headphones are broken.
No, I don't hear.
Okay. Mm, I know Daryl's got some stories. I see you out there, Daryl. Frankie's got to have stories. Andrew got.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's like my computer had the Bluetooth earpiece correct, but the LinkedIn little audio thing didn't. Anyway,
hmm
hi, my name's Kara Brabowski, and your story about the donkey kind of reminded me, and the kid reminded me of a funny experience I had when I was interviewing for a contract marketing role, and it was a couple years ago, and it was over Zoom, and one of the ladies, it was a one-on-one interview, and the lady I was interviewing with was sitting at her very nice home outside on like a porch, and it was fine. I could see her. It was well lit. I could hear her. We were having a pretty nice conversational style interview, and during the interview, her child, who was probably about 3 years old, jumped up on the bench next to her, fully naked
Oh,
on the camera. I was very cool about it. She was mortified, and she got him down and stuff. I really felt bad for her. I don't have kids myself, but I know it was like really hard with everybody being home with their kids.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to be really cool about it. I was like, no problem. Can't help it. It's kids. Let's move on with the conversation. And it was almost like she couldn't get past it in the conversation. Eventually she did. Concluded the interview. And then she sent this really apologetic note to the recruiter, who sent it to me. But then it was like, they didn't talk to me again. I was like, what did I do?
I knew you were gonna say. I knew you were gonna say
They
that.
ghosted me. They ghosted me. And I think it was also another interview with the same role. Like someone else on her team was into asking like really obscure questions, almost like those dumb puzzle questions. And it's like, really, for a marketing role at this? You're kidding me. For a contractor job? And I was like, but it was just so weird. I was just like, not only did we have a good discussion about the job and I felt really qualified, but I didn't get any points for being cool with the faux pas, I guess.
Yeah.
But what can you do?
Yeah. What's funny about contract work is that the way, and I know this is a little different on different levels, but when I started, if you were a contractor, there was a screen with a recruiter, me, and then maybe a phone screen with the hiring manager, and then we sent you. And it wasn't
Right.
a personality fit, it wasn't culture fit, it wasn't anything. It was, can you do the job? Yeah. If you
Right.
couldn't do the job, they were going to send you home anyway. So
Exactly.
the difference now in what we see in the market with 4 interviews on a contract, a 6-month engagement, and I know Wib can probably attest to this as well, that we have this huge hurdle to cross where people misunderstand the point of contract labor. It should be easy. It should be, at Robert Half, we used to call it direct starts. We didn't even have the hiring manager interview them. If we felt
Right.
confident someone could do the job, we sent them.
I find a lot of hiring managers don't keep a two-way door perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like a decision yes, hiring takes effort, right, on a hiring manager's part, especially for a full-time direct hire. But it is a two-way door decision. I mean, if it's not a good fit or for whatever reason, it's not like you're stuck forever, as either the candidate or as the hiring manager. Especially for contract roles, right?
Yeah, contract shouldn't be that hard.
What I love are the contract interviews where you go in and it's not even a contract to hire, it's just a contract role. And they ask those stupid questions of, why do you want to come work for us?
Yes.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't know. It's a 6-month engagement. I don't.
Someone asked me, someone gave me a panel interview, like 3 people for a contract role. This was years ago. Again, it wasn't even contract to hire. I don't even remember what kind of company it was. And the guy thought he was really smart. And he was like, I want you to talk through this question with us. And it was like 3 people looking at me while I was talking it through. And it was the thing like, you're in a room and next to you in the next room, a light bulb is on, but it was one of those stupid puzzle questions. Like, how do you turn off the light bulb with you can only make X number of trips. There's no switch, blah, 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 and I would ask questions about it. And every time I'd ask a question, they'd be like, no. And you could tell there was this little glint on his face, like, you're not going to get this. Like he was really in love with asking a stupid, irrelevant question. And then kind of like torturing, enjoying the torture of me trying to work through this. And I was like, wow, I do not want to work for someone like that.
Yeah, that's odd on a contract role. I think that, and I've heard stuff like, how many McDonald's are there in the city of Chicago? And they're not even looking for an answer. They're looking for your logic to get to the answer. So that's just really weird on a contract interview. So.
I mean, I think a good answer to that is, why is this relevant to this job?
Yeah,
I know that sounds like a smart ass answer, but if you say it right, if you say it nicely, you say, please explain to me how this is relevant to the role, so I can better address it. But hopefully that trend is dying.
Well, what I would like to start seeing more of, because so much on LinkedIn I see about job seekers getting help with interviews and so forth. I would love to see some content creators put out content helping hiring managers put together reasonable, common sense interview questions for the positions that they're hiring for. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're trying to do that. One of the services that we want to offer after we get off the ground would be training. Like, if people like us, they like us, you know. A lot of people don't, but that's fine. But if we could offer a training for people in those positions, because everybody that's a hire, and me and Taylor talked about this on the live the other day, but everybody that's a hiring manager isn't necessarily just there to hire people, right? They're not HR, they're not a recruiter. They are making a final decision, and we tend to think that they're very knowledgeable in those things, but really, they can ask the questions to do the job, and they can ask, you know, simple things that they're given a sheet and supposed to fill out, but they're not trained really how to understand the psychology behind answers and things like that, and what you really need to get a good feel for a person. They're just knocking people out based on a couple things that somebody gave them a sheet to ask, you know. So we were thinking about offering something like that, where we actually teach people a better way to get through the interview process, you know, so that when we leave after we hire your person and you don't need us on a lower level position or something else that we don't have expertise in, then you have a guide to get through it. And I think that you'll see a lot of that. Like the things that we're seeing right now in the market, me and Amy talked about this earlier, those people are moving out of those positions now. So
What
it's not like
position?
it's forever going to be the director level, C level. Like things are going to move in a different direction now. They have to. We don't have the dinosaur mentality anymore.
What
We'll move
positions
towards
are moving?
innovation, like what we talked about earlier with when you called me a boomer and said that my generation was going to lose power and your generation was going to take over.
No, that's what you said. You said
But,
Anyway,
but
I have a
instead
I
of,
have I have a suggestion for you too, Richie, as you guys are thinking that through, and maybe it's already on your radar. Um, you know, a lot of industries, but especially tech, and I'll say, you know, as somebody who was recently with Amazon and who was trained to interview there, it's a very one-way. These interview processes that are so heavy on the behavioral question format. While I understand the reasoning for those and how they help the hiring team, they don't seem to leave any room for candidate questions and candidate like back and forth with the team or with the interviewer, like as far as a conversation. So, you know, I was trained to interview at Amazon under their really strict behavioral interview process. And I had to get, you know, X number of questions in about each, you know, topic or principle, whatever I was supposed to interview for, and give the candidate like 5 minutes at the end for their questions. And it was just
mhm,
like, there was no dialogue. There was no room for dialogue, right? It was all kind of one way and really structured by the interviewer and then subsequently by the company, right? Because I was following what I was told to do, and then I had to write up a big thing on all the data, which took tons of time. But a
right,
lot of a
and
lot of big
yeah,
companies do this, so I feel like these companies are leaning heavy into the behavioral model. They're forgetting the balance of dialogue with the candidate.
right, and
I
I
think you
get
see
that,
that
and I
more in big companies and small companies. They really want to have that dialogue because
mhm.
they're more into making sure that they're hiring the right person when it's like a startup because it's very expensive for them to hire and then replace someone.
Mhm. Yeah, I think in Amazon it's a matter of metrics. It's a matter of
Yeah,
volume.
I mean Amazon's
So
huge.
yeah, you have to get through a certain amount. If you're in talent acquisition, you need to hire a certain amount of people a day in order to fill all the roles. Well, the amount of turnover at Amazon, they probably, and I don't know, Kara, but
Yeah,
I would assume that you can't ever achieve balance there because so many people quit while you're hiring people anyway, especially in the lower
Yeah,
level stuff. I mean,
but it's a
I know
yeah.
people that applied to Amazon and were hired on their online system, and they're considered hired until they go in and do their drug tests and paperwork for the warehouses, right?
Mhm.
They don't interview. It's like a
Well,
trial
that's
run.
different. I'm talking about corporate. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
got ya.
Talking about
But
like
I'm just, you know, I see what I'm saying is I would encourage as you're creating some sort of guide, right, for hiring managers
Mhm.
is to express to them the necessary for balance between like those deep dive behavioral questions with actual back and forth conversation,
Right.
because
Yeah.
that's something I never got when I was interviewing at a company like that. I realized in hindsight that it was really a disservice to me because it ended up being a really bad fit of a company for me.
hmm
But it's just not a good candidate experience, I think, when a hiring manager is solely deep on just hammering behavior questions the whole time.
Well, I'll
Right.
say I've worked
I
for
agree. I
some
mean, and
startups myself and had that dialogue in the interviews. And it still wasn't a fit. Like people they can lie on these interviews. Like you don't know who someone is in just this conversation or what the company's about. And
Sure.
it turns out being different than what you're talking about in the interview.
I think that that's right too. But I think that the most of the time when I've done a screen or hired anyone, the people I tend to hire are the ones that stop me in my tracks while we're doing the interview and have a conversation with me at the end of the day. Like anybody that I'm interviewing in any industry, if they can connect with me and stop me from going through, like I'm going to hire someone if they answer all my questions right, have the right experience, and fit the role. I'm going to make the decision to hire them as long as there's nothing that I can see that's glaring. But the people I'm going to pursue after the interview, if they have multiple interviews, are the ones that can stop me and make me think and have a conversation with me on top of being qualified. That, dead silence. I must be wrong. Um,
Well, however, comma, the vast majority of companies out there aren't the big FANG companies. They
right,
are they're companies, and my experience from what I have seen is when it comes time to there's somebody coming in for an interview, that specific hiring manager is in a panic. They don't know what questions to ask. They
Mhm.
start asking around to the different groups. Hey, do you want to come in on this interview and ask some questions? Hey, do you want to come in? Because they don't know they don't know what they're doing, and it's kind of like a hot potato.
right. I agree.
Yeah, makes sense.
And that's how, unfortunately, how the market is. And it's not going to get better because there's so many candidates out there either. It's going to be, we're going to see interview 20 people for a role, keep looking because the hiring managers will get a kid in a candy store mentality. They'll have so many choices, and then it'll come down to crunch time. You're still going to lose the most qualified candidate to companies that move faster. We're still going to wind up in that crunch. I don't know what to do. I'm going to hire the next person. I got to hammer through these interviews, keep the cycle repeating, and then it'll go back to candidate-driven market where people that are looking are going to control it a little more, and then they're going to be scrambling to get people to stay interested, and then we keep going around and around and around. So yeah, you're
And
right
we
though.
chose to be in the middle of it.
Yeah, I love it. Gets me going in the morning.
But I definitely think that on at least from what I'm seeing, maybe I'm not connected to the right people, but that's definitely, like I said earlier, there's tons of people putting out content about how to go in as a job seeker to interviews, but there's nobody that I have seen that is making content for hiring managers to, how do you stop weeding out the weak and instead search for the strong?
Hmm.
I think I can tell you why that content's not popular, and I would say the number one reason is that just like you don't see people with jobs as much on LinkedIn, you don't see hiring managers. They don't need to hang out here and get back. I mean, I do it to them too, but they are a group that is not well liked on LinkedIn, just like recruiters, and they don't need to be here, you know? So when someone is posting content, the kind of the goal is twofold. Well, it could be vanity too, but you're trying to help and then you're also trying to generate business, right? So if I'm posting tips for hiring managers, I can tell you every post that I've done over the last month that was directed at a hiring manager, that wasn't complete bullshit where I was just being annoying. If it was advice for a hiring manager, it was the lowest performing. If I stacked them up, it would be the lowest performing posts of all of mine.
Well, and it's never hiring managers who comment or react on those posts. It's
Right? They
always
don't want
job
to. They get
seekers. Like, you're
inundated.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if they
Totally.
even see those posts, you know?
They don't. I don't think they do. And if I was a hiring manager and I had Richie Lampani out there talking shit all the time, I wouldn't comment. I mean, think about the job seekers that like follow me or you or anybody. And then if Joe Blow from wherever that had a couple of jobs open and maybe somebody felt, or a couple of people probably felt they were qualified and didn't get hired or didn't even get a rejection email, they comment, they're gonna get blasted. I guarantee. I mean, other than the couple that I work with that I know hire and are very helpful and already kind of know what they're doing that I see commenting, most of them don't come on that side of the site. Recruiters and hiring managers have a whole nother site through LinkedIn, Sales Nav, or Recruiter Lite, or RPS. They don't have to look at the feed, so they're not engaging in content.
Hiring
Therefore,
managers don't need any of
people.
it.
Right. Well, yeah, hiring managers don't need any of it. They need me and you, but um, they're not engaging. They don't need to get dogged on. They stay on like Facebook and whatever, TikTok, I guess. I mean,
Talking to their friends.
or lurk, or lurk. They're not gonna create the metrics that they want,
But like
that people want.
back to that though, like creating change like that in an organization, changing how they do their interviews has to come from within, or they need to hire someone like me, an HR transformer, to come in and teach them, how to fix their shit.
Hmm.
Um, and that's something that Richie and I would be able to do. Like, and when I was an internal recruiter, I had to teach all the hiring managers how to interview people, like what questions to ask and what questions are illegal to ask, because they were asking people if they have childcare and stuff like that, which is illegal to ask. I was like, you can't just ask people that, or like ask them how many kids they have, or all these things.
They will. I mean, even at our old job, those questions they get around it. They ask targeted questions so that it's, you know what I mean? Like there's ways to ask that, and that's the job of HR to make sure that those questions don't get asked because it is illegal. It is actionable. So yeah, I
Yeah, and they
mean,
push back. They'll be like, well, what if I do it this way? Blah blah. And I'm like,
right.
just don't, like, just why do
Yeah,
you need to know? Anyway, like maybe if they had a job, they could afford childcare, right?
right.
Uh, uh, I do have another funny story, and
Okay,
it's
good. We're
and
getting a
it's
little serious for this first one, so go ahead with.
Oh, sorry.
from the viewpoint. So following along it was during my tenure at Comcast as a security architect. My manager comes out to me again with the hot potato. He's got a technical interview that he's doing with a potential contractor. He lives in Mumbai, or I don't know, someplace far away, overseas, and it's a video conference interview. And I'm like, okay, I can ask him some technical questions. He's supposed to be very technical. So it's a young man, he's all in a suit and tie, and he's sitting in a very, it almost looks like he's sitting in a new construction closet, very small room, primer white walls, and he looks scared. And I started asking him questions, and every time I would ask him a question, he would look up and to the right, off camera, and he'd kind of nod his head or shake his head no, and nod his head, and then he'd look back at the camera and give me the answer. I asked him about 6 or 7 questions, and I'm like, okay, this is really weird. So at the end of my portion of the interview, I said, "Hey, can whoever's off camera, can you have them get in front of the camera so I can? We might want to hire them."
Mhm.
because you're obviously not answering the questions. Can you have whoever's feeding you the answers? Can you have them come? Because they seem like they can do the job.
Yep. Yep.
I
Yep.
I had something similar happen with a Golang dev, and it turned out when he went to the interview with the company, they said he kept pausing and like listening to something, and then he would answer the questions. So like someone was translating for him or something on the interview, and it was a big mess. They were really mad,
They were really, really bad. Like
very mad.
Amy was featured in a video
I was
made by
featured in
our
a training
company.
video of how to
Yeah,
find
not,
scammers.
but it was so. I know if everyone doesn't probably know this, but um, there is a group of different people that actually employ people with visas, and they treat them interchangeably. So on a remote job, you could have a one person interview and then an entirely different person either show up to do the work, or they could split the work,
Hmm.
or it could be shipped out somewhere else to be done. So it's not just like, obviously we've dealt with it, Amy dealt with it, but this is something with recruiters. Like, we have to be very careful when we get certain kinds of resumes. Um, they're representing themselves to be someone that knows Golang, which is a software engineer thing, or they know .NET, which is another thing. But that happens a lot in the development world, where there's people working, multiple people on one job, or somebody's doing an interview because they can speak really English really well, and then another person that doesn't speak English shows up, and then you've got somebody on a video that can't even really understand what's going on. So that's stuff that recruiters deal with a lot in that world, and it's been going on forever. I had to deal with that in New York too, but
And I mean, that's a whole another thing speaking for remote work is you have an uptick in stuff like this. And on both ends, you have people scamming that pretend that they have jobs and people
hmm
scamming pretending they can do a job. Like it goes both ways. So
oh yeah, absolutely. Somebody posted,
remote's made that way worse than it
yeah,
used to be.
and then they want a fee to get a job. I saw a job somebody posted the other day, executive assistant for $250 an hour. Like, Gibby, I'll take it.
Yeah,
Dang.
that's not real.
Oh, I know it's not real,
Oh,
but
okay.
I still
Just
applied, and I
making
paid
sure.
the guy. I paid the guy to put me in for the role because it seemed legit at first, but I'm kidding.
Oh,
Um,
no.
so
Did
I
you give him
think,
your social security number and your bank account
yeah,
too?
but I own part of an Emerald mine too. Now, I was gonna tell you that we own part of a
Okay.
Emerald mine. Some prince is gonna come over or something, give me paperwork. But um, so I think we'll open it up to questions. We're being silly now. So if anybody has any recruiter questions, like
Yeah, yeah.
what, like steps or anything. I know this is usually a favorite
Or
part for
resume or
the
application
resume,
questions, something.
or yeah, how do I? No, yeah.
Can I ask a question to the general audience?
Yeah.
My personal experience in the last 2 weeks has been very positive, and I'm getting a lot of responses to applications. Is that just, am I unique, or are other people seeing that things are starting to kind of ease up, and there uh, that the job market is there's
Yeah.
actually traction now?
Nope, nope, not seeing it. I've been looking for 5 months.
Um, it's March, so usually recruiting, where it's like, and Wib, you and I have talked a little bit about this, but um, so the beginning of the year. So if you think about it in terms of budgets, and when people are given more money to hire people, the end of the fourth quarter is usually about now, fiscally, for a lot of companies. So they get their new budgets and they're able to hire, and you're higher level. So I kind of understand where you're getting a look where they were fudging it before because they couldn't afford you. So I would say in terms of you, yeah, but also we're seeing a lot more companies reaching out and asking for help recruiting wise too. But I think it is just that they got new budgets. This is always a busy time of the year for hiring, usually March and April, and then October,
Yeah, it's like
September,
spring.
October.
It's like goes with the seasons. It's like spring when there's all the baby animals everywhere. It's like hiring's the same way.
And having babies. It's busy in the spring. Or is that what you told me earlier? Was it having
Wait,
babies or
yeah, that's a bad
fresh new
comparison.
life, new life, new
Yeah,
life.
there you go.
All right. Anyway, yeah, well, I mean, you're gonna see more interviews. Kara, you'll see more too. I think anybody, you really need to, make sure you're applying for the right things. People
Richie,
are gonna
let
get
them talk.
busy. Who?
For anyone who wanted to ask a question.
Who? I know. I was answering his question.
Okay, but like, is anyone else seeing an uptick though? Like, I think this was more of a job seeker question.
Yeah, I am not seeing that much of an uptake. I've been looking for 2 years.
Mhm.
I think I got so over 1,300 apps out. I do actually have one interview in about 3 weeks, which they asked me a couple of weeks ago, and that's basically it. Other than that, I have somebody that's requesting me for 5 days on a little 5-day contract, and that's basically it. It's still, for the most part, it's really been really super quiet for me. So I would say that, at least in my experience, it hasn't really improved that much. Not really enough to notice, but enough to go, oh look, I had an interview, my first interview in 6 months.
Yeah,
But I'm also kind of a weird situation as well because of the stuff that I do. So
right. Anyone else seeing like a difference?
Hi.
Hey,
Okay. Okay. I didn't want to like interrupt anyone, but I guess now since there's some silence, I'll go ahead and say something. Yeah, I've actually seen an uptick in terms of activity.
mhm,
I don't know if maybe, I mean, I think some people will be like, well, duh, of course, this is probably a reason why. But a big thing that I've noticed is that ever since I've been a lot more active on LinkedIn in terms of just like messaging people, um,
mhm,
posting and then also commenting on other posts, I've definitely seen an uptick. And it's definitely been a lot better than when I was looking back in like December/January. But then again, like I also could have been because I was working in a different time zone. Like I was in Japan still. So I think
mhm.
that could have definitely been a hindrance.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think that could be everything because you see people who message recruiters and hiring managers and they still don't get an interview or anything. So I don't know. I mean, like Richie was saying, there's always just this uptick in spring, so that's definitely working in our favor right now.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think spring is the season where things start to pick up, especially because I think now or at least from what my understanding is that now since everyone's kind of figured out their budgets, now they can say, okay,
Hmm.
here's where we can start hiring.
Yeah, yeah, but that's good advice though. Like, definitely reach out to people, um, and see and like try to connect with people, and see what you can get going.
And I think also, I mean, this is just my opinion, and everyone, I guess, shoot, don't just shoot messages at recruiters and hiring managers. Shoot messages at people who are working for companies or working for things that you're interested, or just who are involved in things that you're interested in too, because you never know. Just making a friendly connection with one of those people, they can always say, hey, I know someone who knows someone, and next thing you know,
Mhm.
you have a Zoom interview with that company that you were interested in.
Yeah, you never know who knows who, and that's what's awesome about networking. Does
Hello.
anyone else have any questions?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, Darren.
Hey, how are you guys? I want to piggyback off what Tanya said. Like, I haven't been seeing like a drought in like my interview process, like she said, I would reach out to people in the company. For example, I just had an interview with Streamline Health, and I just messaged one of the other BDRs there, and he set me up an interview with the hiring manager, just from that connection. So just being diligent and going above the hiring managers as well, and also around them has worked for me. But I have a question. I've heard that there's independent recruiters out that recruit for companies. Is this true?
What do you mean? Like, we're independent, so we don't work for any. We work for ourselves,
Yeah,
but we work for
We work.
6 or 7 different companies right now.
that's exactly what I was saying. Yeah. So how
Yeah.
do I get in contact with more guys like you? Because I know I can go and prospect a company, but
Yeah, I mean, Amy answers this a lot on her post, so I'm gonna let her answer this one.
What?
cool.
How to meet recruiters?
How do you find the agency recruiters? Which, how do you know who
Oh,
to?
so I would just search in your LinkedIn search bar, like your industry and recruiter.
Okay.
Like, so if you're in marketing, I would search marketing recruiter. Because usually people put like in their headline or in their job experience which industries they recruit for. We don't really, because we're just so all over the place. Like we have too many different areas we recruit in to be specific like that. But most people are specific, right, Richie?
Yeah, we're a little all over the place. Darren, you're in SAS right now, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm interviewing for like SaaS companies.
Yeah, I
Yeah, we
might
actually
take
have a
that.
few like that.
Yeah, we do. They're not. He's in Marietta, but um
Oh, cool.
yeah, so that's our neck of the woods, but um you're gonna just need to look up, like, Lauren Sermon was in here earlier. She might have remote roles, or like any recruiter that specializes in SaaS. Your tagline's a little confusing to me because the Scrum Master is a real different thing than a SaaS salesperson. Did you just get that designation recently or something? Garrett, you there?
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry. The speaker went to my car. I'm actually out and about, but I definitely heard you. Thank you.
Oh yeah, no problem, man. All right, cool. Melvin, did you have a question?
I had come on to answer the question about if anybody else saw an uptick, which
Okay.
apparently, I mean, I don't know if everybody else there, if all you guys are just in tech, because I am not in tech.
Right.
So
You have such a.
the only person's having the only thing I ever get hit for is things that have nothing to do with anything. Like one of my other recruiter friends keeps putting me in for software engineer, and I'm sitting here going, first of all, what in any part of my background
Right.
looks like that?
I
Well,
get
Amy
that
gets
too. I
recruited,
get
yeah.
like every week I get messages from a recruiter saying they have a software engineer role. It's like there's nowhere on my LinkedIn that says I can do any of that.
I'm a research scientist, so I kind of get it, but that's still not the same thing. So
You
I'm
know
also
why?
the only person in healthcare apparently in the moment too. So go
You're
figure on that one.
hitting on some kind of keyword in the search on the back end.
Well, I know there's no my LinkedIn, as far as I can tell, has no word software anything anywhere. I've searched, and so I'm like, what is going on?
Well, you're getting into tech stuff because the quantitative analysis and project management maybe.
Yeah, but that's still not an engineer.
I know, but it doesn't make sense. But if they're looking for a quant person, AML and AI is hot right now, right? Machine learning. So they're looking and getting a hit on Melvin for
For
that
quants.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I get hit up all the time for stuff that is nothing near what I do. I'm like,
Right.
how did you arrive at me?
On LinkedIn or in like email?
Oh, both.
Okay.
Yeah, it's both. It's mostly email, but about 2 to 3 times a day, I get some ridiculous things in mail, and I've started not responding to them, because if you respond, they get their in-mail credit back. So if you don't respond, that's less people they're bothering.
Right.
And
I
Well,
started
I
doing the
mean,
same thing as was reporting him.
I mean,
Hmm.
I won't be offended right now, but I do lose emails that way. Anyway, you're getting emails like that because on even like a Laxo source, it's pulling all this information, like an ATS, it's pulling all this information off your LinkedIn. It's building an email
Yeah, but
list.
Richie, have you ever reached out to someone and said, I'm looking for a software engineer, and they're like, I've never engineered a software in my life?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I
Yeah,
was a first and second year recruiter too. Yeah. I probably emailed Wib like 2 months ago because I
I've
wasn't
never
paying
done that.
attention.
Like, how could you? I don't even know how that happens.
Because if I source 200 people with Laxo, I'm not going to go through each one individually. I'm going to send out the mass email and hope that my search was good enough. And then I'm going to, hopefully he's nice to me and I have something else for him. Like these aren't particularly filtered search doing. They're just spamming out to 500 people at once. I mean, we saw that at the last shop. Like, remember I said that Trevor was sending out 10,000 email outreaches a week. You think that he was going through each one and making sure that they were the right job title? It's just not realistic.
That's true.
hey guys, before we lose too many more listeners, I do have a public service announcement for recruiters. Is job seekers, if you have a good experience with a recruiter, not just Richie and Amy, but any recruiter, throw something up on LinkedIn to say, give them some props, give them the respect that they deserve.
Mhm.
Because it's very it's few and far between when you run into a recruiter that goes that extra step, goes that extra mile, and does things like what Richie and Amy are doing. Give them some acknowledgement, give it so that other job seekers can kind of gravitate to them.
Yeah, Daryl down here in the audience is a good recruiter. He puts out a lot of good information too. If everybody follows him, they probably learn a little bit.
Joshua, did you
So
have a question?
yeah, Joshua's been up here for a while. I was gonna get to him.
I just want us to stack that on, recruiting and what y'all doing is tremendous, and oftentimes people don't get to see, what's behind the scene. So yeah, kudos to you all. But I completely agree. It's a very competitive landscape right now. So a lot of time, what Richie was saying is so poignant, and that was um, just for example, when we do have an opening, more often than not, I base my hiring decision on some, emotional thing that the applicant make me felt at that time, whether it's creativity or he or she was able to, stop me in my track and just make me think.
Mhm.
You see, so yeah. Uh, Having said that, my question to you is, as someone who's hiring,
Mhm.
um, you know, um, what do you look for in the applicants? I'm just curious about that.
For recruiters, what we look for?
No, and probably our
I do
open
apologize.
roles.
Let me go ahead and elaborate, because the first thing you see is the piece of paper, right? The resume, right?
Mhm.
Um, do you typically look for something else? How do you base your decision on
Well,
on
we
on
screen
hiring
them, so
as a recruiter?
if their resume fits the job, then we call them. It's, a 5-minute call maybe, and kind of get a better feel for them that way. Make sure their experience lines up with what's needed. Richie, do you have any input
Yeah,
there?
yeah. I mean, with any of our roles, I mean, especially anything that's gonna have a lot. Okay, so most of our roles are very specific. So first we have to get past the required absolute minimum qualifications before we really even talk to anybody, unfortunately. Um, because we do work if we have a role, can make a culture or personality or your character decision, we of course do that. We're gonna go after the person that's gonna have the right attitude to fit into our client's culture. But most of what we're doing initially is, do they have the minimum required years in whatever skill set? Um, do they have the everything is right?
It
And
also
then we're
really
gonna
depends
call
on what you're hiring for, right?
right. That's what I'm trying to get across. It's just it's so like
Because, like,
I've
what if it's
hired
a job that you don't need experience? How do you figure out?
well, like with you're talking about like with the meeting we had the other day where they just want newer people with grit, right?
Mhm.
Right. So yeah, in that circumstance, we're gonna find people that are in the discipline that he wants that stand out as people that are gonna solve problems and actually ask the right questions to get to the right problems. So yeah, there are jobs that we hire 100% on personality, as much as I hate to admit it. But a lot of our jobs are going to have a lot of minimum qualifications before we even get to the character, skills, all of that. So yeah, it's for tech and finance. We have to be really specific before we would make the phone call. If that answers your question.
Richie, I have personality. Hire me for
You
something.
know what? If I can find you something, I will. You've been around, and you support me and Amy like, a lot. We have a cool core group, but you're everywhere for us, I feel like. So, and I
I
know,
how can I ignore you, Richie? I mean, you've got some of the most entertaining posts up.
did you hear that,
Plus
Amy?
free beard, plus
Yeah,
free
I
beard
hear it.
daddy. Yeah, Amy, you cannot be beard daddy over here.
Woo.
Unless you want to try to figure that one out, but I suspect that's not something you can easily do.
Yeah, I don't think I'm
I'm
interested, really.
yeah, I'm gonna get in trouble if this
For the best.
conversation goes any further. Um, but yeah, we're actually over an hour. Daryl told me he's working. Thanks for the shout out. Oh, we're down to like 18 people. I wondered if this was it should have been half an hour, but anyway, we really appreciate everybody that stayed and listened and talked. Yeah,
Thank
we're
you.
gonna do this like every 2 weeks, so probably we'll have different guests and stuff. I know we have a couple suggestions about things that people want to learn and be taught. Amy,
Mhm.
anything else you want to say?
Um, no, I mean, just keep, trying to get that job. Look for new ways to stand out. I mean, I would love to pick Joshua's brain and see because he was saying, there's things that stand out and that's how he hires people. I'd love to know like
Hmm.
what precisely stands out to him. But I think that's a conversation for another day, maybe.
I also
Yeah, for
definitely
sure.
want to hear that too, because I think I stand out regardless of what I'm doing just because of my background. But I would love to know what stands out.
Yeah, me too.
And if there is so much, the
Well,
thing is
Joshua, if you have
to
a minute
stand
and want
out.
to answer that,
Yeah, we don't have to end the show now or anything like that. Josh, if you want to stay and explain what you look for, that'd be great.
I'll try to make it quick. So, a lot of time when I think about this, it's just a um interesting thing to think about. I think about this all the time. You know how a lot of time we are emotional buyer. I think that has something to do with it, I think. Um, but when someone is, like I give you a specific example, like when we do an interview, um, um, when somebody comes in the office and when he or she is able to say, "Hey, Joshua, let me ask you about this," and that, and something specific that I have not thought about that get me to really think about it, and that's how that somebody stood out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of difficult to pinpoint. I know we don't have time for that, but yeah, I think again, like for every opening we get inundated with so many resumes. So I think it's gonna take much more than just applying to those jobs. I think it's gonna take a little bit of as cliche as it sounds, just being here, for example. So a lot of time we don't do that enough. Just networking, getting
Yeah.
to know that person, getting to know that company, and I think that's what it's gonna boil down to. Yeah, I'll stop
Okay.
at that for now.
Yeah. Maybe I'll message you, at a later point and try and get more info so I can relay it. But yeah, I mean, that's good to know, like different ways to stand out when you're applying to these jobs so that you aren't just looked over in the pile of resumes.
You always have to have an angle. You
Yeah.
have something kind of like a reality show where, on these different stupid reality shows where, this person has this challenge that they're overcoming or in this, and their popularity rises and falls based on the angle that they have. That's basically
Right.
how hiring is.
Maybe we should make a reality show.
Is this like the real world all over again?
Oh, the show? You can watch all those on Netflix now.
Real world?
Yeah, right from the first season.
That's crazy. I definitely need to see that again.
But definitely if you are job hunting, document. What if to be able to go back, because I've had places from that I applied 8 months previously come back to me because the people that they hired didn't know anything about Microsoft Office. They were not they they weren't qualified at all, and somehow they got the offer instead of me. I didn't even get an interview, but they came back, and it's good to have the documentation so that you're not going to it fresh. You know what happened before, and just journal every day, because job hunting is a full-time job. Journal your job
I've heard that
and write.
Teal has a job tracking system. It's free, Teal. Like instead of making an Excel sheet or whatever, you could just use Teal. I've never used it, so I'm not advocating for it. I've just heard it going around.
Yeah, I'm old school. I have a pen and paper and I journal
Teal,
every.
Teal is fantastic. I've started really getting into it, and there's a lot of integrations in it, like a browser extension, so you can grab contacts off LinkedIn, save them in your tracker, and grab jobs off LinkedIn and different platforms, and then you can connect the contact to the job, and you can put follow-up dates and notes and all kinds of stuff. It's really cool. There's also aspects of it, which I haven't gotten too deep into, where you can upload your resume and it'll parse out every bullet, and then you can basically start to spit out custom versions of it and then compare it to descriptions like for ATS scanning. That gives me a headache, but I don't know. I find that a little overwhelming, but it's a cool tool. It's got a lot of stuff in it.
Awesome. Yeah, good
Teal?
to know.
That's Teal?
Teal is incredible, yeah.
Hmm.
And I don't know. I mean, that's the thing too, is you're always hearing how you have to alter every single resume submission to beat the ATS, and I'm so tired of hearing this because it's just exhausting.
Oh, it's
That's
not
not
true.
real.
Oh,
Is it a
Richie will
legit
tell
thing?
you all about the ATS
No,
robot.
no.
I hate the concept of it is overwhelming to me.
Yeah, it's not true. I mean, you can tailor a little bit so that you fit a little bit better with what a recruiter is going to look at, but the ATS isn't really they aren't rejecting people. I mean, this is
It's
a whole nother conversation, but go ahead with.
It's not so much an ATS. What was explained to me, and it kind of makes sense, is that social media has kind of retrained everybody's brain. So it's cross generational. It's not Gen Zers, it's not millennials, it's not Gen Xers or Boomers, but social media has kind of screwed everybody's brains up. So they're not really reading your resume. They're just skimming through it to see what keywords they can find, and the more keywords that they can find that match the job description, it determines whether or not you're going to get a callback or not.
Right.
It's not
What
it's
we
not
do,
ATS.
yeah,
It's
we
not
do.
ATS. It's just human laziness.
Well, the ATS is there to, it's actually an applicant tracking system, right? So the ATS is there so that we can keep track of all the people that apply to jobs or that we've sourced for jobs, right? What you're talking about is a lot, I think it's Control S or F, Control F. I don't use it a lot, but if I'm looking for a .NET developer, I'm going to type in the search bar, the search function, ASP.NET, or whatever the main function of the job is, and I'm going to see how many times it's throughout the resume. I'm going to make sure if I need 4 years, I can count 4 years in the experience, and it's not just listed as a skill on the side, right? So yeah, it happens, and the scanning for 7 seconds thing is something else that happens quite a bit. But that is you know, you have to remember that there's no recruiter on the earth that at 10 years old told their daddy they wanted to be a recruiter when they grew up, right? So you're dealing with a bunch of people that didn't want to do it in the first place. They didn't even know what it was. Got out of college for communications or whatever crap that they couldn't use. No offense to any communications majors. And then took a job for 50 grand a year, and they're expected to do between 18 and 50 screens a week with people, and they're just not that interested in it. And if you stick with it and do it for a while, you start to get interested. But like I said earlier, I sucked when I started, and it took me a really long time to get used to be able to look at a resume and know what I was looking at without just looking for keywords, you know. And we blame a lot of it on the ATS, but that's just not true. So, yeah, it takes a long time. But I think we'll end on that. I think there's a whole show for ATS talk. So, yeah. Amy,
Hmm? What?
did I put you to sleep?
Yeah.
Taking a nap. I need a nap too. All right, yeah.
But that said, Teal's a very cool tool. You don't have to use the ATS component.
Right. Yeah, I was talking more of like people using it for job tracking and keeping track of what jobs they apply
Exactly.
to and companies and whatnot. I've never looked at it.
It's awesome. And there's a lot of like short like videos on how to use it and stuff, on how to use different features of it. I found it very easy to start using.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm behind on tech. Like I get a new one from Amy like once a week. So all right, I think that's it. We're gonna do another one in 2 weeks. We'll probably have some guest speakers, stuff like that in the future. If you have any questions, you can DM me or Amy. And that's it. So thanks everybody for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Richie, answer my email, man, please.
Okay. All right, gotcha.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you
All
for
right.
listening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
Thank
All
you. I told you would do well, Richie.
Thanks, Melvin.
Thanks,
Good
everybody.
luck, everybody.
Bye. All right, everybody. Have a good day now.